Here comes the airplane.
Welcome to Ruby Reviews Books. Reviews from a cat who cannot read. From a cat who cannot read. Ruby Reviews Books, where Ruby, a cat who cannot read,
Welcome to Ruby Reviews Books. Reviews from a cat who cannot read. She may not understand the words, but she sure likes books. Today's book is To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. A modernist work written in stream of consciousness, the story takes place at the Ramsay vacation home in Scotland. In rough strokes, the book's plot revolves around two family holidays and the 10-year interregnum between them. Bookended by a promised trip to the lighthouse and its eventual realization, a few things happen in the novel. There is an engagement, a dinner, some walks, a lost brooch, and a painting that never quite captures its subject. But these things aren't important. The characters themselves, of which there are many among the 10 Ramsays and their guests, are also not that important. Plot and character are secondary to the form of the novel, which turns the Ramsays into a canvas for the shifting exploration of thought and impression that circles around the few goings-ons like a swirl of human emotion and ephemera. To the Lighthouse is a meditation on thought itself, as recursive as the themes and phraseologies that repeat throughout the novel. The novel dwells inside its characters' heads as they wonder about what one another thinks, dissect their interactions, and contemplate the meaning of a color or a plant or a look, or how their measure of one another rises or falls at any given time depending on action, temper, or the turn of conversation. All of which returns in lyrical repetition, like small choruses peppered across the span of the novel, whether it be the crash of waves, pacts against tyranny, or lines of uttered poetry. Most interesting in To the Lighthouse is that, in terms of perspective, there is no fixed point. Take, for example, Mrs. Ramsay reading the story of the fisherman's wife to her son. It is a moment where she frets about children late for dinner and suspects Augustus Carmichael does not like her, while Mr. Ramsay wheedles for sympathy and little James hates him for taking up his mother's attention. And from there we flit to Lily Briscoe painting and William Banks wondering whether a triangle is the right shape for the intimate tableau of mother and son. Even then, perspective is not neatly bound by what one character can see, though sight is a preoccupation. Even the house itself, the closest thing to a constant in a kaleidoscope of characters and points of view, is not fixed in the narrative, as the sea or the town or beach might also demand contemplation. Despite the multiple perspectives, the novel does coalesce around a few key personalities. First among them is Mrs. Ramsay, probably closest to being the centerpiece of the book. In things both said and unsaid, and the framing of the plot structure itself, the novel pivots around her life and death. Her husband, the philosopher Mr. Ramsay, is also prominent as a personified passion and petulance that sweeps through scenes like a storm. Even though we rarely get inside his head, so many characters seem to live in reflection of his moods. We are also treated to their friendly foils in the form of the characters Charles Tansley and Lily Briscoe, who frame the Ramsays from a position of subjective distance and mild opposition. Through twinned jealousy and admiration, the respective protégés of husband and wife are our windows into alternate interpretations of the figureheads in their family. But To the Lighthouse is not so tedious as to be a pure exercise in structure. There are recurrent themes around life and death, legacy, permanence, and accurately capturing the fleeting. These musings intrude constantly on the characters who bicker about pessimism and hopefulness, togetherness and solitude, nurture and stoicism, all distilled into the maybe or maybe not of a trip to the lighthouse. And when they do return after war and death and decay and fortunes, To settle this central quibble of the novel, these considerations are just as complicated now as they were for prior selves long past. Even the lighthouse, another constant of promise and motivation, is an ambiguous symbol, at once realized hope, the isolation that all people feel in life and death, and perseverance personified. To the Lighthouse is a difficult read. The artful language relies heavily on passive structure, winding indirectly through thought and action, like a sea breeze wending its way around the creaking old house, its stones, its shawls, its shivering timbers. There is practically an uncountable deluge of parenthetical clauses in these long sentences that harken back to earlier scenes or interject some leitmotif, whether it's a lyric or a line from poetry or a repeated observation. It's not uncommon for a passage to be joined by not just one, but 2 or 3 semicolons. The shifting perspectives are hard to follow, sometimes with the point of view changing multiple times within the same page or paragraph or even sentence. As an experimental novel, To the Lighthouse stands out as a triumph, but as a personal experience it is mercurial, hard to pin down feelings for, and inflicting upon one impressions both positive and negative, repetitive and revelatory, all at once. I give it 4 stars out of 5. Let's see what Ruby thinks. 1, 2, anything else? Even a little sniff? No? Okay. Well, there you have it. To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. Rated 4 stars, 2 rubs, and a snarl. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you have any suggestions on what we should read next, please leave a comment.